The Philadelphia Eagles defense badly needs help on the edge and a cornerback. There are two specific players that Howie Roseman needs to target before the trade deadline.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Welcome in, Eagles fans, to this Friday edition of the show. I'm your host, Louie DiBiase, getting you ready for Eagles-Vikings this Sunday in Minnesota at 1 o'clock. Vikings head coach Kevin O'Connell officially confirms that it will be Carson Wentz taking on his former team, the Eagles, trying to make sure they do not lose 3 straight games and drop to 4-3. 5-2 in this scenario looks so much better than 4-3. That might sound obvious, but this is, like I said the other day on the show, the gut punch game, the gut check game, I should say. It would be a gut punch if they lost it. Like, time to figure out who the 2025 Philadelphia Eagles are going to be. Are you going to be like the 2023 team that collapsed? Are you going to be like the 2024 team that turned things around after their skid early on in the season? We'll see what happens. Got LOE 3 coming for you later on in the show. 3 player prop bets that I'm going to take for the Eagles in Eagles-Vikings. So that's coming up later on in the show. But I want to start actually with a more long-term conversation about the 2025 season. If they want to compete for a Super Bowl this year, the Philadelphia Eagles roster, I still think on paper and on the field, is the most complete in all of the NFL. Like, everybody has problems. Most teams are not going to look like the 2024 Philadelphia Eagles that are a top 5 all-time talented roster, from when you just look at the stars at pretty much every position, but not just the stars at the top, how complete that team was, how deep that team was. The backups were great. The role players were great. The stars were great on both sides of the ball. There wasn't a position that they were winning in spite of. They were winning because of or with pretty much everybody that stepped foot on that football field. So the Eagles this year, do they have enough to be a Super Bowl contender on the roster right now if they did nothing else the rest of the year? I think so. Yeah, absolutely. I still think, like I said, it's the best roster in the NFL. Even if it's not as clear and obvious as last year, I do think it's the best roster in the NFL. With that being said, they clearly do have some issues that they are winning in spite of some of these positions or some of these roles, or they're seeing a much higher variance, a much wider variance than last year, more inconsistent play at certain spots than last season, because it is harder to replace those role players like a Josh Sweat, a Milton Williams, a CJ Gardner-Johnson, a Darius Slay. When those B players get paid like A's, you got to replace those B's. And sometimes it's not as easy, because when you're not throwing a ton of money at that position or a lot of high draft picks, sometimes you get like the Josh Uches, which are more inconsistent players. You get some flashes, but you get some lows as well. And so that's what the Eagles are dealing with, as most teams do after a Super Bowl season. Like, that's just the reality of the current state of the Philadelphia Eagles. With that being said, with that being a reality, they do need help on the edge, because Josh Uche's been good this year. His pass rush win rate's actually really good. I think he's been the most consistent edge rusher on the Eagles, getting to the quarterback, but at the same time, he has 0 sacks this year. Nolan Smith is on IR. Zadarius Smith retired last week, so they need edge help pretty bad right now. At cornerback, Kelee Ringo did not pan out the way I thought he would. He did not pan out the way that Howie Roseman thought he would when he let Darius Slay go, when he wasn't willing to pay Isaiah Rodgers as much as the Minnesota Vikings, even though reports came out this week and Rodgers even confirmed he was talking about an extension with the Eagles. The Eagles were not willing to match an offer that Minnesota gave him. I don't want to say they were lowballing him, but considering Rodgers didn't get paid a whole lot with the Vikings, it kind of sounded like they had a pretty hard ceiling, a hard cap that they were willing to go with that contract. So they banked on Ringo panning out. They banked on Adoree Jackson maybe being a poor man's version of what Darius Slay was last year, but that hasn't checked out either. And I'm just glad they gave Ringo the opportunity. So now we know that he's clearly not the guy long-term. He cannot be starting in the playoffs this year. Same with Adoree Jackson. So what do? Well, the trade deadline still is a little bit away. There's still time to make roster moves. And I think it's clear and obvious you need to add an edge rusher on this team, and you need to add a cornerback. I don't think moving Cooper DeJean to the boundary is a long-term fix. And I don't just mean beyond this year, but the long-term of this season. And I don't think, although you can use him more on the edge, Jahad Campbell is so good at inside linebacker. He is by far the best coverage linebacker in the NFL right now. I'm not trying to move him full-time to the edge. So those are maybe quick fixes and certain packages on defense throughout the weeks until Nolan Smith comes back, until Quinyon Mitchell is 100%. But for the longevity of this season, the fix at edge and corner for me is trading for somebody. And I think that it's a slam dunk. The top two candidates at edge, at cornerback, should be Trey Hendrickson and Riq Woolen. I don't know if you can get both of those guys before the deadline, but if you had to put a gun to my head and say, pick an edge rusher for Howie Roseman to trade for, pick a cornerback for Howie Roseman to trade for, I would say it's Hendrickson and or Woolen. And some people were tweeting at me this week when I mentioned Hendrickson, who, by the way, according to Tony Pauline, who's normally right about his inside sources within the Philadelphia Eagles, he picked the CJ Gardner-Johnson reunion right last year. He's called a lot of good shots about what the Eagles are going to do. His sources are legit. He did say yesterday in an article that the Eagles are expected to make a bid, make an offer for Trey Hendrickson, but there is competition. There's a lot of other teams that want him as well. So the Eagles are interested, but some people were asking me, like, wouldn't it be too expensive? Like, do you really want to give away a young player and a high draft pick and a contract extension? Like, that was the back and forth conversations that we had in the offseason when it seemed like Hendrickson might get traded because he couldn't get a long-term deal done with the Bengals. And at that time, I would agree with some of the replies I got this week about trading for Hendrickson. Like, was I willing to give up a second and third round pick or a number one and then also give Hendrickson $35+ million a year for a 30+-year-old pass rusher, despite him being the most productive sack guy in the NFL right now? Like, no, I wouldn't have been willing to do that. I was not trading away those draft picks, that kind of money, and a prospect like Jalix Hunt to get Trey Hendrickson. But the reality is now, to get Hendrickson now in October, it's not going to cost nearly as much as it would have in the offseason. Trey Hendrickson now is kind of a rental player because Hendrickson re-signed with Cincinnati. He signed an adjusted 1-year contract extension, so he wasn't holding out throughout the regular season. He clearly is willing to play without a new deal, so the Eagles don't have to give him a new contract. Considering the Bengals now have little leverage because everybody knows he's going to leave after this year, he's a free agent after this season, they can't really sit on their hands and say, we want a first-round pick in Jalix Hunt or Nolan Smith, or we're not giving you Trey Hendrickson. Like, they don't have that kind of leverage anymore either. So now, yes, I'm very interested in Trey Hendrickson. Now I do not think it's going to take nearly as much as it would have in the offseason. Now it might only cost you like a third-round pick, and I'm very willing to do that for Hendrickson. I'm not going to trade away a player and a pick and more. Like, I'm not giving them Jalix Hunt. I'm just not. Even though Hendrickson is a much better football player in 2025 than Jalix, I'm not giving away a year two player with Hunt's kind of upside. Even if he hasn't broken out so far this year like we expected, I'm not doing that. But a 3 for Trey Hendrickson, and it's him and Nolan Smith. When Nolan Smith comes back from his injury, Jalix can go back to a role that fits him more as a third pass rusher on the edge. Josh Uche, the perfect number 4. Azeez Ojulari proved he can play if they need him to as a guy in that 4 to 5 man rotation. That would be perfect. I'm all in on that now, but it will cost you a little bit more, I think, because there is competition. So you can't expect to give them a 4th and a 5th and get Trey Hendrickson. Like, I can't see that. It's going to take at least a 3. Luckily for the Eagles, they're more creative with trades, so they have an advantage there. They're more aggressive, and they have more draft picks than most of the teams in the NFL. So I'm all in on a move like Trey Hendrickson or Riq Woolen at cornerback. I got into it with a couple different Eagles reporters this week about Riq Woolen's physical abilities and just overall talent compared to guys like Keely Ringo and Adoree Jackson. I know Woolen got benched basically in Seattle beginning this year, and he's had up and down play since an incredible rookie season a couple years ago when he was only behind Sauce Gardner as a Rookie of the Year finalist. But if you think Riq Woolen is on the same level, even with his tackling issues and there's questions about his work ethic, even though those are definitely problems that I don't think Vic Fangio would like, and it's why I don't think a trade would happen, if you don't think Riq Woolen is on a completely another stratosphere compared to Ringo and Adoree Jackson from a coverage perspective, I don't know what to tell you. Riq Woolen, considering his speed, his length, his ball skills, his coverage ability, he is definitely going to be worth the day 3 pick that you give up for him. Riq Woolen last year, I mean, look at this chart when it comes to yards allowed per target and passes defended per target against number 1 receivers. Riq Woolen, if you can see in the top right corner, is up there with the best of the best in the NFL at cornerback. Sauce Gardner, Pat Surtain, Quinyon Mitchell, A.J. Terrell, J.C. Horn. Oh, and who's that in there? Right there against wide receiver ones in yards allowed per target and passes defended per target. It's Riq Woolen. And that was last year. Last year as well, he also allowed the 16th lowest passer rating in the entire NFL when targeted. So yeah, like he is a very inconsistent player and he has some of the same weaknesses as a Kelee Ringo. He's a similar style of player, but he is so much more productive. He's such a better coverage corner. And I know there's more to just coverage, especially in a Vic Fangio defense for a corner, but I would rather have the same kind of weaknesses of a Ringo and a Jackson, but you're upgrading significantly in the coverage department for Riq Woolen. And outside of him, like, I don't know what else you're going to do at this point. Newsome was traded to Jacksonville. Campbell went to Cleveland in that corner for corner trade. Tyson Campbell for Greg Newsome. I mean, I guess a Cam Taylor-Britt is somebody. Roger McCreary from Tennessee might be on the trade block. But Riq Woolen, to me, is by far the most talented and proven player on the open market. And he's young. Like, he could be a part of this defense long-term. Now, does he fit what Fangio wants? Probably not, so I'm not predicting it. But I think he absolutely is somebody that would interest Howie Roseman. And again, this is what I would do before the deadline to add to the corner and edge rusher rooms. I'm bringing in Trey Hendrickson or Riq Woolen. That's my 2 cents. I think it's more likely they bring in Hendrickson than Woolen. But for me personally, even though Hendrickson would be a great move right now, I would almost rather add a corner than an edge rusher because I think when Nolan Smith comes back, and I think Jalen Hunt will get better as the year goes on, and Uche's a solid 3 when Nolan's back, I do think they'll be okay more at edge than corner. I just don't think, now that we've seen a 3-game sample size of Ringo and we know what we have in Adoree Jackson in Philadelphia, I just don't think you can trust those guys in the playoffs. I mean, they were getting destroyed by Lil Jordan Humphrey on Thursday Night Football against the New York Giants. You can't do that. So Hendrickson's the better player at edge than anybody available at cornerback in the open market and the trade market. But for me, like considering the position area of need, I think a cornerback is a bigger need right now than edge. But maybe they bring in both. You got to do at least something at those spots. And Hendrickson and Woolen would be my pick for sure. Let me know what you think. Hit us up on X at Locked On Birds. Coming up next right here on Locked On Eagles, there are weaknesses on this Philadelphia Eagles roster that have definitely made this season so far pretty inconsistent, even at 4-2, 2 games over 500. I had an interesting question on X the other day. What could Howie Roseman have done differently this offseason to avoid this, if anything at all? I have some suggestions coming up next as we take a look back on this offseason right here on Locked On Eagles. All right, guys, today's episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast is brought to you by Betterhelp. October 10th was World Mental Health Day, and this year we're saying thank you, therapists. Life can be tough on and off the field, and behind millions of mental health journeys are therapists who showed up, listened, and helped people take a step forward. Betterhelp is shining the spotlight on those connections while also making it simple for you to find support whenever you need it. Therapy moments can be life-changing, whether it's learning to be better, to connect with, your kids, your healthy relationships, or finding healthy ways to manage stress. You can do it all through BetterHelp. If you've ever thought about trying therapy, this is the perfect reminder that help is out there and the right therapist can make all the difference in the world. This World Mental Health Day, join us in celebrating the therapists who've helped millions take a step forward. If you're ready to start your own journey, BetterHelp can find you the right therapist. Our listeners, are going to get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/lockedon. That's betterhelp.com/lockedon. Guys, today's show is also sponsored by PrizePicks. Every day we make decisions, but on PrizePicks, being right can actually get you paid. Don't miss the excitement of this football season with PrizePicks, where it's good to be right. Playing PrizePicks is such a fun, simple way to add more excitement to football. You just pick more or less on player projections like Josh Allen's passing yards or Saquon Barkley rushing for a touchdown this week against Minnesota, and then you're in the game. I love how quick it is. I mean, you can make your lineups in under just a minute. Plus, PrizePicks just added stacks. So if you want to ride with a player, you can select their passing yards, rushing yards, and touchdowns all in one lineup. It's also fun to follow other players in the app and copy their lineups with just one click. Download the PrizePicks app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks. It's good to be right. Thanks as always for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. One final show before Eagles-Vikings this Sunday at 1 p.m. We'll be live right after the game for our 30-minute post-game show with me riding solo. Then we'll have an hour-long show as well after that with myself, Harry Mays, and Jason Martias live on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to our channel. And then those shows will also be posted in audio form, as well as our 7 other podcasts we do throughout the week on all podcast apps. So make sure you subscribe to Locked On Eagles, video, audio. Nobody's churning out more Eagles content for you than this show right here. And right now, we are going to get into the state of the Philadelphia Eagles roster a little bit more. I want to talk about Howie Roseman because we've been suggesting ideas of how to improve this roster on the fly, maybe trading for an edge rusher like a Trey Hendrickson or a cornerback like a Riq Woolen or bringing back a Rasul Douglas type of player. Figuring out how to better improve on some of the mistakes or the weaknesses of this roster from this offseason. Now, I got an interesting question about this when we were kind of having some back and forths about like what to do, especially at corner and edge rusher. That's been the talk of the week after Zadarius Smith retired earlier in the week, and we know Nolan Smith is on IR. And people were asking me, like, what could they have done differently? Was this on Howie Roseman? Like, why? How did the roster get this way where it's not nearly as deep and there are some, compared to last year, and there are some weaknesses in the starting lineup? For me, I don't think there's like a lot he could have done. I still think, even though the execution hasn't been perfect, his philosophy and his strategy this offseason was the correct one. I would much rather have him do what he did this year in free agency, in the draft, through trades, then do what he did after 2017, after winning the Super Bowl, where he just handed contracts to everybody, regardless of age, regardless of if they were, a one-hit wonder. He wasn't paying guys for what they were going to do. He was paying guys for what they did. And it was a very reactive win now kind of approach. And when you win a Super Bowl or contend for one, like, yeah, you want to make moves now to maximize that window, but not in the name of sacrificing the future. And so I think this offseason, like, could he have been a little more aggressive? Like, probably. But I think he had to have that disciplined approach to make sure that we don't want this window to shut like it did after 2017. We want to expand this thing. And to do that, we need to keep resources for the future. We need to keep money on the books to give to Jalen Carter. Like, we don't want to pay all our B players A money when the A players that are on rookie contracts are going to need that money down the road. Like, we've given so much money to the offense, and eventually we got to pay Jalen Carter. We got to pay Nolan Smith. We paid Zach Bond. We're going to have to pay Quinyon Mitchell. I mean, look at how much cornerbacks and pass rushers of that caliber are getting every single year. So could they have made a more competitive offer for like an Isaiah Rodgers? Yes, that's on Howie Roseman. I think that's at cornerback. That was the big mistake, is not bringing him back. Now, I, like Howie Roseman, believed in Keely Ringo and his upside, and I wanted to see that through. But I think bringing Rodgers back wouldn't have stopped you from doing that, and it would have given you a much better alternative option than what you have right now with Adoree Jackson. You had to trade for Jacorian Bennett. You might have to trade for another cornerback. So, like, when it comes to what Howie could have done this offseason better than what he did, like what mistakes he made, I do think like letting Rodgers go was the big mistake. But outside of that, like, yeah, Milton Williams has been really good in New England. Josh Sweat has been really good in Arizona. They could use Mekhi Becton. I think Tyler Steen's been okay this year, but Becton's an upgrade. But you can't pay all of, like, the reality is, like, I can't really blame Howie for that, because if he goes out there and pays all those players, it's going to make things so much more difficult to then make more, like, to make future moves with your actual core, like a Jalen Carter down the road. And those guys clearly would still help right now. But I also like the idea of kind of like waiting and seeing still. Like, there might be a better move to be had than bringing back Isaiah Rodgers. There could be another big time move they can make at that position. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think he could have been a little bit more aggressive. I don't love letting CJ Gardner-Johnson go, but the long-term strategy that Howie Roseman took this offseason, I think it was the right one. And, I think there's a couple holes on this team, but the defense and offense are still so loaded that I don't think it's like he completely milked this roster after winning a championship. Is it as deep as last year? No, but that again is just the reality. Like you can't pay everybody. Oren Burks, for instance, would it be great to still have that guy as your third or fourth linebacker? He was so good in the playoffs last year in the Super Bowl run when Nakobe Dean went down. Sure, but the Bengals paid him basically starter money, and you can't do that with every single player. So, and also banking on the young players that he picked, that's what helped him win a championship in 2024. I don't hate that he wanted to see through the development of Jalix Hunt. I think that seeing through the development of Keely Ringo is completely understandable. Now, again, the plan B in-house should have been probably better than what they did with the Ojulari and Uche signings and the Adoree Jackson move. There could have been a middle ground between that and, bringing back, for instance, Darius Slay or Josh Sweat. But yeah, overall, I don't know if there's one clear and obvious, they messed up by doing this, right? I think after 2022, the clear mistake of that offseason was letting TJ Edwards go. That was a huge mistake. Letting Chauncey Gardner-Johnson go, that was a really big mistake. This year, the only one that really sticks out to me is Isaiah Rodgers. The Becton move, I completely understand considering how good your offensive line already was. Having Steen in the works, moving up the ladder at that position. Jeff Stutland's the best offensive line coach, I think, of all time. I get letting him go. Brandon Graham just retired. Josh Sweat was amazing last year, but was he worth, at that time, I would not have paid him the contract that he got. And, same with Darius Slay. I would have let him go too. I just wouldn't have got rid of CJ Gardner-Johnson, wouldn't have got rid of him. And I probably would have tried to re-sign Isaiah Rodgers. But outside of that, people were asking me, what should they have done differently? I don't know. For me, not much. I would have taken the same strategy that Howie Roseman did. Maybe here's one. That for corner, it's keeping Isaiah Rodgers. At edge rusher, maybe the one move, as good as Jihad Campbell is, I would have maybe traded up for an edge rusher in the first round instead of Campbell. Yeah, that sounds rough right now because Campbell is such a good football player and he's the defensive rookie of the year favorite. But did they need another inside linebacker? No, even with Nakobe Dean's injury, I think they probably would have been fine with Trotter until Dean came back. Maybe trading up for James Pierce. Hindsight is tough because Campbell, we know, is so good now. Would I do that now and get rid of Jihad? No, absolutely not. But at the time, again, if you're asking me in that moment, knowing just in a vacuum, those positions are going to struggle right now. Ringo's not going to pan out right away. Same with Jalix Hunt. What do? I think bringing back Rodgers is the one mishap from Roseman, and maybe at edge, you trade up for a James Pierce, or you draft a Donovan Ezereku, or an edge rusher early in round 2. I guess, but it's hard to really blame Howie for this one. I don't know. And again, it's not like the roster's in turmoil, and it's not like these positions can't get better. It's not like Jalix Hunt has been terrible where he can't get better as the year goes on. It's not like they can't make another move at cornerback. They still have 2 elite cornerbacks on their roster. So again, when you put things in perspective, these problems the Eagles have are not nearly as bad as some of the problems that other teams in the NFL have. So I think we need to put that in perspective as well, that, yeah, we're coming off a year where everything was so perfect and top heavy and deep at the same time. There were stars in the starting lineup, but the role players are now starters on so many different teams. It's a top 5 roster of all time. That's why I don't think it's fair to say that, to be mad that 2025 doesn't look exactly like that. That doesn't mean you should ignore the problems and settle, because they can improve on the edge at corner. And there were moves that maybe they could have made to help those positions a little bit better. But I think it's unrealistic to expect what you got last year is going to happen every single season. What they're dealing with now is the reality for most teams in the NFL on a year-to-year basis. So I wanted to talk about that, though, because it was a good question from one of our listeners that hit me up on X. What would you have done differently? I guess, again, with hindsight, make a more competitive offer for Isaiah Rodgers. I personally wouldn't have got rid of CJ Gardner-Johnson, but I like Makuba, and I think he's going to get better as the year goes on. So I'm not as mad about that. And the other one was maybe trade up for an edge rusher like a James Pierce or somebody in round 2 in the draft. Maybe make a more conceited effort to grab a defensive lineman earlier in the draft. But that's my 2 cents on that. Let's wrap up the show. Coming up next, LOE3 presented by FanDuel. Coming up, 3 player prop bets for Eagles-Vikings. Today's episode of the Locked On Eagles podcast is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride with more IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anybody. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details. Mazda brings the same intention to how they craft every model. You can feel the Japanese craftsmanship in every detail. From the metallic accents to the available Napa leather upholstery, you can make everyday drives feel like anything but. From smooth handling to intuitive controls, with all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like the players of the NFL and so many leagues across the world of sports, Mazda sweats every detail because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. Guys, today's show is also sponsored by Rugiet. Guys, you've probably heard of Viagra or Cialis. Maybe you've even tried them. But if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rugiet Go Long. That's exactly where Rugiet Go Long comes in if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill. This isn't just another ED pill. It's a total game changer for confidence. Go Long combines 2 doctor-trusted medications in 1 dual-action formula, so you can get hard and go the distance. The effects can last up to 36 hours. That's confidence all day, all night, and even into the next day. The process is simple. Connect with a board-certified doctor, 100% online, and if prescribed, your treatment ships discreetly right to your door. If prescribed, like I said, it's going to go right to your door. So level up your confidence in the bedroom. Head to Rugiet.com. That's Rugiet.com and use our promo code LOCKDOWNNFL for 15% off your order. That's Rugiet.com, promo code LOCKDOWNNFL. Make sure to use our code so they know that we sent you. All right, guys, time for LOE3 presented by FanDuel. 3 player prop bets for Eagles, Vikings, and I'm doing better. I am now 4-2 in our last 2 performances against the Denver Broncos, against the New York Giants. The Eagles offense still extremely inconsistent. They are a terrible second half offense right now, which is very uncharacteristic. But for me, they have been putting up a lot of numbers in the first half, and that's been allowing me to win more of these bets than we had a rough first month of the 2025 season. But again, 4-2 in the last 2 weeks. Let's try to keep that going. Taking a look at my record, now 6-12 on the year. Our unit shares we are getting close to being back in the positives. We were at like -5.5, and now we're at negative -2.65 for unit shares. So going to try to keep that going. Here are my 3 player prop bets for Eagles Vikings. Number 1, Devontae Smith, the over on 4.5 total receptions at +106. Jalen Hurts to have at least 40 rushing yards or more at +126. And then Saquon Barkley at least 80 yards or more at +104. I'm really banking on the run game finally getting back on track in this football game. I think they have the advantage in this matchup against the Minnesota Vikings interior defensive line. As Luke Braun of Locked On Vikings told me yesterday, the Vikings run defense has not been great this year. It's only a matter of time with Saquon Barkley, Jalen Hurts, Jeff Stoutland, this elite offensive line, as it gets healthier, they're going to hit. They're going to have a big rushing attack. They're going to have a big rushing game performance eventually, and they have to if this team wants to get back on track. So that's what I'm banking on for LOE3. Saquon finally getting a 100-yard performance is what I'm going to predict against Minnesota. Over 80 yards is at +104. I like those odds considering this matchup. And I think Jalen Hurts, he has not been used a lot in the run game, like manufactured touches, because they like to run him north-south. They haven't really been using him much with like quarterback draws, read option, because they're trying to keep him healthy throughout the entirety of the season. But they need to get him going more so they can play a 12-on-10 football in the run game. Over 40 yards at +126. I like those odds. And the Devontae Smith over receptions, I love that bet. I feel like I have a lot of success with that. And it's at, +106 right now. So I like that a lot. Those are my 3 bets. I'm going to go with Devontae Smith over 4.5 receptions, Jalen Hurts over 40 rushing yards, and then Saquon Barkley over 80 rushing yards. that is the way to win this game, get back on track, is maybe in the first half you still throw to get the lead, but no matter how you get it in the first half, if you have the lead in the second half, you're going to need to run to keep it. I just don't trust the passing game. I'll believe it when I see it, that this passing game can close a game out with Jalen playing aggressive, throwing into tight windows against zone coverage. Like, I hope we get there, especially in this game. But I think if they want to be a better second half offense and be the elite second half offense we've seen in years past, the run game has to get going in the third and fourth quarter. Hopefully it does, and that's where I think those two bets win. And Devontae Smith over 4.5 receptions, I like it. I like the matchup against the Vikings corners, even though Murphy's solid, Rodgers is solid. It's not like they're going up against Pat Surtain or some of the best corners in the entire NFL. And Smitty's been, again, he should have had that pretty much game-winning touchdown last week against the Giants, which would have had him at back-to-back 100-yard performances. Smitty's been good over the past couple games, and I think that's going to continue in this matchup. And I feel like I always win my Devontae Smith bets, knock on wood, but I'm feeling confident about that one. LOE3, as always, presented by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel Sportsbook app and place those bets through LOE3. Thanks, as always, for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Now, make sure your second listen is the Locked On NFL podcast, 2 episodes a day with Tyler Rowland, the madman, getting you ready for the week of football in the morning, every morning, Monday through Friday. And then Tony Wiggins, the barber, he's got you covered in the afternoon as well. Until after the game, Sunday, Eagles-Vikings at 1 p.m. Thanks as always for downloading, watching, and listening, and let's go Birds. Fly, Eagles, fly.